for level 2 of Jase's mud mower build. On today's menu, we got tires, we got a pulley swap, and we're gonna lock up the differential in this Peerless 801 transmission. The first thing we're gonna do is tackle the transmission. So we're gonna get this thing jacked up way up high in the air. Let's get into it. Now that we've got this tractor jacked up to a comfortable working height, come over here and check this out. It's the first time I've been under this tractor since we've gotten it, and I don't see any issues here with putting a smaller pulley on the transmission and a bigger pulley on the engine. We have all kinds of room under here. We can recreate another belt keep for the front and the rear too. I don't see any belt keeps back there yet, but we'll make one or two. And then another couple of issues I've noticed is it has a really sloppy clutch pedal. It's really easy to push, so we'll probably put a stronger return spring, and also the brake hangs up, and I figured out why. It's that when you actuate the brake, there's this big piece of sheet metal back here and it gets bound up. It probably just needs to be lubricated. So we're gonna go ahead, pull off the tires, and start taking the transmission out of this thing. Let's go. Something else I noticed is there's a U-bolt that supports the transmission to the frame, and the nut is missing, and it was hanging here just like that. Next, we're gonna pull off the front tires for clearance. We're also gonna check the bearings and make sure everything's cool here, and we're gonna drop the transmission. Meanwhile, Stefan's gonna set up the tire changer. It looks like we're going to need a 7/16 to get the shifter linkage off, and I believe these U-bolts are 1/2 inch. After that, this looks like 1/2 inch also, and this transmission should drop right out. So, Jase, give me a 7/16. Good job, bud. Hey, bud, give me a longer one. Thank you. little bit of finesse, I was able to get the shifter linkage off. It just pops right off the top of that. We'll leave that up there. Next thing I gotta do is take off these 2 bolts, which I've already loosened up, these 2 U-bolts, and the transmission should drop straight down. Now this here is not a transmission jack or anything. It's a stand that I made a few months back for something else, but it works for this pretty good. All right, the next thing I got to take off is the belt, obviously, and then also these springs. This is the spring that goes to the brake actuator, and there's a return spring here. Next thing we're gonna do is take off the front belt guard and the engine pulley. Jase, will you hold this so it doesn't fall? Put that over here, buddy. Oh, we gotta wait for the belt to be out. All right, what I like to do with the pulley is use a 9/16 impact. There's a 9/16 head. It's a 3/8 24 fastener up inside the crank pulley. Right there.
Take it.
There we go.
Where should I put this?
Put it out, we gotta wash it, so put it outside. Or no, put it on the ground right back here. And we're not gonna be reusing this pulley. We've got a new 7-inch pulley for the motor. The last thing we gotta do is take out this belt, and there's one idler pulley here. We gotta take out the bolt to get it out because there's a keep on here. Oh, sorry about that. Now that the drivetrain's been all disassembled, we got the transmission over here on the table. And another thing is we set the tire changer up previously and then quickly realized we can't use it because it's way too large to fit through the center of these 3/4 inch hubs. So we're going back to the old threaded rod method, and Stefan's gonna take care of that. He's gonna change the tires, and he's also gonna take this transmission out and pressure wash it. Because check this out. Last night I was scrolling Facebook and an engine popped up on Marketplace only a few minutes from here up in Tennessee, North Tennessee, where a gentleman is selling a 12.5 horsepower power built, good running Briggs motor. So he's selling it for $30. I'm gonna go pick that up and these guys are gonna carry on.
We are ready to start changing these tires. Now, go on, Cole. Let's go outside. No one's talking now. Ready? I cannot do it. Jase, put down click on the lever. Easy enough. Now, we have already removed one rim. And this one was pretty rusty. However, just seeing inside that rim, it's still perfectly white. So we're only gonna have to deal with one rim on the inside.
So we got back from getting the new motor. Here it is. It's 12.5 horsepower, power built Briggs & Stratton. Now, on the ad on Facebook, it said it was a 1989, when in fact, it's a 1998. So, I did not know I was going to run into the next problem, that the 11 horsepower motor on the tractor is not a 1-inch shaft and it does not have a 1/4-inch keyway. So therefore the hubs that I bought for that, thinking it was, are not going to work with these weldable pulleys. I got two options. I can either swap this motor into that and take all the controls and governor and all that stuff, and even the carburetor, because I don't have a complete air box on this or anything. Try to take the risk of putting that 11 horsepower flow jet onto this and transferring all the stuff, the governor, like I just said, the controls to this, because it does have a 1-inch, 1/4-inch keyed shaft. Or what I can do is cut this pulley off of this, the one that came on that 11 horsepower, and get this centered and weld this back onto it. So I have a 7-inch pulley on the motor. Either way I go, it's gonna be a lot more work than I thought. But I think that by trying to put this motor, which I was told runs, it has good compression, but I risk going through all that work for it not to run correctly with the 11 horse carburetor. Or I take the chance and try to get this centered perfectly and weld this up. I think we're gonna attempt to go the pulley route first, modify this one. Next, we've got the transmission clean. So I'm at a crossroads here. Do you want to do the transmission first or the pulleys first? And also, Stefan got the tires off the old rims. This one needs a little bit of work. This one's good to go. And we got to get the new tires on. So we got our work cut out for us. I think I'm going to start by working on this because I think this is going to be the hardest thing to do. Stefan's going to work on the tires in the meantime. We'll see you in a minute. All right, so after like 7.5 hours of deliberation, I decided to go with modifying the pulley method because I don't want to take a chance on switching out all the engine components to the other motor that's unknown and it not run good. That one runs good. So what I've got here is the stock engine pulley. I've got the stock engine shaft inside here with the 3/16 keyway or whatever size that is. Now what I've got to do is cut this perfectly concentric to the center of the shaft around in this flat spot where it's pinched and welded. And I want to cut that the same exact size as the center of this. And it just so happens the center of this opening is 1 39/64. And it also happens that this hole saw inside the center of the hole saw is 1 39/64. That works out pretty good. However, I don't have a lathe. I need a lathe, just ain't got one. So come over here. My plan is to put this back on the motor, and the motor crankshaft should hold it concentric. Now what I've done here, I put tape around this hole saw arbor and it fits just perfect inside the center of where the bolt threads into the center of the crankshaft. You see where I'm going with this. I'm going to attempt to put this on a drill, locate it in the center of the crankshaft bore, and slowly cut the pulley away until just what's left of the center is there. Then I'll be able to line it up inside the other pulley, the 7-inch, get it perfectly level somehow. I'll figure that out next and weld it around. Let's see how this goes. All right guys, here we go. There we have it. I'll tell you what, that was a lot of hot chips coming down. Now that I've got the pieces cut out, this is the center of my shaft. And so you can see on the old pulley, the relationship of it to the pulley, and you can see the spacing of the holes all around it. Now, when I set it into the new pulley, there is a little bit of play. I have an idea to fix that. But what I gotta do is get these two pulleys, they're sitting on a flat surface, I gotta get the center lines the same. So I put 4 washers under the outside edge of this pulley, and that brings it up to the right height to this one. Now when I set this down in here, if I tack weld that into place and put it back on the engine, the pulleys themselves, this will be in the same space as this one used to be, as far as off the deck of the mower. So the way I'm gonna center this thing in the pulley is I'm gonna put this on some paper and trace out the outside edge. What I need to do is measure the diameter of that and then find the center with a compass. And I'll lay everything out on the paper and draw a crosshairs. So that way when I set this back in it, I'll be able to see the center and get this lined up the best I possibly can. And then we'll tack weld it, put it on the mower, we'll spin it, and see how it looks, if it wobbles or anything, and we can adjust it. Alright, so between Stefan and I and Jase, we managed to lay out the pulley and get the tires mounted, which became priority all of a sudden. But we got that done, we fought that, it went super smooth. Now, I've got my pulley all laid out here. I've got it centered. If you come in here, check it out, you can see the crosshairs in there, maybe. You see that inside? So this is what I'm going with. It's about as close as I'm going to get it. I believe it's going to be very, very close. So next thing I'm going to do is tack weld it around in a few places, put it on the mower, and I think we're going to fire it up and see how it spins. All right, I got this thing spot welded 3 places. And I take my tape measure, I've got 30 seconds here. I'm at 2 and 27 30 seconds all the way around. I think I'm very close, definitely in the ballpark. Not lathe perfect, but eyeball perfect, redneck engineering perfect. So let's go ahead, Stefan's putting a battery in the mower. We're gonna put this on the crankshaft and spin it and see how true it looks. See how true it, if it wobbles or anything. It's perfect. No bounce, no wobble. Look at that bad boy. All right, cut her off. That's perfect. You know what? I want to see that one more time. Crank it up. All right, good. I'll buy that for $1. All right, guys, I'm gonna take this thing back off and I'm gonna weld it on full on both sides. So that way our engine pulley is now squared away. After that, we're gonna jump on the transmission. It's fully welded out, and I put it back on the mower. We cranked it up, and it still spins true. So next, we're gonna get this thing painted. Meanwhile, I'm gonna start working on that transmission. I know that pulley's stuck on there. Moving right along, we're over here at the transmission. This thing's been on here for over 40 years as far as I know, this pulley, and it's stubborn. I've already been doing a little bit of tapping with it. A little bit of prying, a lot of heat. It's showing no signs of giving up. So I don't want to destroy it. I don't want to destroy it because we need to compare it and make the new pulley the same height. So we're going to attempt the hydraulic press method again. We're going to put some angle iron. Let me see that. If it'll fit. And it's not going to fit, guys. Maybe like that. We're gonna have to put some angle iron underneath it, hanging from the press, and then we're gonna have to put a socket here, push down on the center, and hopefully that'll help break it free. Let's see what's up. Well, so much for not destroying it. It looks like a taco shell right now. The only other option we've got is to cut this thing off. So we're getting the cutting wheel set up, and we're gonna have to dissect it, go at it, cut off the pulley, and then cut long ways on this thicker hub material here. But we just can't destroy the input shaft or the snap ring that's inside, because I've beat these things before not knowing any better, and I've tacoed the snap ring inside the unit, had to put a new one. So we're gonna go ahead and go that route. All right, we decided to come outside so we don't throw chips all over the shop. Finally got the pulley hub off, combination of a bandsaw and a cutoff wheel, and I managed to not pay attention and I shaved off a section of the Woodruff key, but thankfully it's replaceable, and we're gonna get one of those tomorrow, Tractor Supply or whatever. But in the meantime, we're gonna start taking this thing apart. And before we did destroy that hub completely, we measured it because we're gonna have to shave down the new hub to match the old with the new pulley. So from the center, or from the bottom of the hub to the center of the pulley in the V, it needs to be 15/16 inch. All right, we're ready to crack this transmission open. We got our workspace nice and clean. I've already loosened up all the bolts with a wrench to make sure none of them were stuck and they're gonna twist off. I'm gonna let Jase go ahead and unscrew them with the impact. And we're not just gonna unscrew these and put them in a pile. We're gonna put them in this little template I made. What I did is I drew a crude outline of the transmission. I took a knife and I just made an X through the cardboard where each bolt goes. So when it comes time to put this thing back together, we're gonna put all the bolts right where they came from. And I know that on these, they're all the same length, but still, it's a good practice. You ready, guys? Go ahead and start. All right. Here, unscrew it more, buddy. That one's gonna go right here.
going to
Yep.
edges.
This is the back piece here. So this one goes right here. Right there.
Dad, I can do it means to
Don't get them mixed up.
right.
This one goes in the middle.
Oh.
Oh, there's one. That's right. There's that one down in the center there. Don't forget about this one. That one always likes to hide. Hold on. Let me do it with the wrench first. Because if they're stuck and corroded, the impact will twist the head right off. And instead of happiness and welding the axle, we're gonna be trying to drill out broken off studs.
Dad, I can put
All
it
right.
right in the center.
I see the tops already loose, guys. All right, we're gonna get this thing flipped over because the bottom doesn't have anything attached to it,
Yeah.
and we'll be back in a second. Oh, there's water inside of it.
Water?
Oh, we got flooded out.
All right, here we go. That was just a brake.
Brake
That was just
shoe?
a brake shoe, no big deal. Yep. 40 some odd year old grease. And there is no gasket maker or RTV on these. It's just a metal to metal interface. And because the grease does not try to escape the transmission like a fluid would, when we put this thing back together, we're going to use gear oil and RTV to seal it up. And there's your differential right there, guys. Yep, all right, be careful. We don't need to make anything fall out. What we need to do next is clean this thing. We need to take all the gear sets out and very gently, so we don't lose anything, all these bronze bushings. This stuff will just tends to slip off the end of the axle, and then you're like, oh, which way did it go? I don't remember. We gotta take pictures, take a good look at it, even though we've done these before, and make sure that we put everything exactly back how it was.
We didn't know
Okay.
this part was right here.
See, we gotta take notes like this. Look, there's this little, see this little triangle at on the bottom of this bushing? There's a place in the case for that to fit into. There's a relief for it. And like this one over here is facing that way. We need to make sure that we keep tabs on all this stuff. And we don't want to mix up like this bushing with this one because they probably wore in different over like the last 42 years.
It's not wanted.
And this differential here is very easy to lock up because of the way it's open. See here, can you see the side, this open side here?
Yeah.
You can have this laying flat, we'll clean it good, and we can reach the welder in there and just weld the spider gear to the axle
The
gear.
shoe. The belt.
All right, first thing to come out is gonna be the differential. As you can see, that's very automotive-like. But this thing has a lot of, it just feels like there's a lot of friction going on with it. But we're gonna weld this thing solid, so it'll have a lot more friction. Next, man, this grease is just like never gonna come off. These gloves are done. Oh, we gotta get the shift key out here. The shift fork, I mean, excuse me. It looks, feels like it's gonna come right out too. But that chain is what's holding all this stuff together. Let's dive in.
I was ready to fall out.
This bearing set on the side here I'm pulling out has got needle bearings inside and a seal. Definitely don't want to mess that up. Whoop.
Dad, put those bars in here.
No, I just want to do enough to take the chain off.
Oh, after you're gonna put it all back on it.
If If I can, I don't know.
Dad, you want me to help? One last gear at the bottom. Man,
I gotta take these off.
Dad, should I help?
All these gear sets.
I'm taking the whole thing apart now.
There we go. And now I don't want to get that messed up, even though we took a bunch of pictures.
Dad, I have to weld it all to that on.
No, it's not welded.
Guys, this is still kind of fragile.
It's got splines. Hold it all together. So the brake disc is being stubborn. We're trying to get it off with a gear puller. I got it under a little bit of pressure, and we're just adding some heat. Try to expand it.
Yep. You just take that off. Man, yes, Dad. It's definitely starting to move. Yeah, because as it goes, you need to tighten it because it's getting farther away from you. Dad. Now, I'm going to take this.
Little by little, it's moving.
Is it really easy now?
Yeah. There it is. All right, so we got this thing almost completely disassembled. We've got a bowl for each gear set, as you can see. And guys, we took this stuff apart and took pictures as each bushing and each washer came off. So we're not gonna get any of this stuff messed up. Any of the soft parts or delicate parts, we put in Ziploc bags. All right, we got rubber seals in here, thin washers in there. These are the differential parts, carrier bearing, bushing. Now, we gotta take this differential and get all the grease out of it because I believe there's some snap rings here or something. We gotta get the axle shafts out and I can't even see in there to get them out. So we're gonna have to blow all that out with the pressure washer or something, I don't know, some degreaser. But otherwise, we're gonna continue cleaning all these parts and get it ready to lock up and put back together. But it's been a super long day. It's been 92 degrees in here most of the day. So we're done for the rest of the night and we're gonna see you guys tomorrow in the morning.
Yeah.
What's up guys? It's the next morning. We worked last night trying to clean these parts up more, but it got super late on us and we were just done. So we're back at it this morning. Stefan is currently outside pressure washing this stuff. So the pressure washing takes off the initial caked on grease, but these are some of the gears he already washed and they're pretty clean, but they need to be degreased all the way. So we're gonna take this Jungle Jake I found over at Big R's and we're gonna spray this stuff down, wipe it down. But what we really wanna do, all this stuff is okay to degrease, but this will probably be good enough just wiped off. We really wanna focus on the differential because this is what we're gonna be welding. We need every bit of grease and whatever grease has also gotten into the pores of the metal, all that stuff needs to be totally clean because the weld process will not work good at all if it's not. So on this differential, on the axle gears, there's snap rings, no problem. But on the spider gears in this axle here, this shaft, there is a roll pin that we need to drive out in order to get all these gears out because we got to clean them independently. We can't have them in here. We'll never get all that grease out. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing this. We're going to clean the parts as he brings them in and then we're going to weld it, get this thing reassembled. Oh yeah, it's coming right out. That's not a big deal at all. Right there, that's your roll pin. So now this shaft should just come right out, one way or the other. There it goes. And now we got to get our axle shafts out we got to get the snap ring pliers, get those out, and all this should come apart. It's been a few hours later. We finally got all the gears clean. The differential is perfectly clean. We used a combination of brake parts cleaner, degreaser, torches, you name it, wired brushes, but it's finally done. We've got everything reassembled in the transmission as far as the differential and the axles go. Now, one thing if you notice, I've got clamps holding the axle shafts in the transmission exactly where they go. Next thing we're gonna do is cover up all the parts I don't want weld spatter. And then we're gonna weld, let me show you, right here. We're gonna weld right in the corners of where these gear teeth mesh. We're gonna go tack, 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 tack. We're gonna turn it over, same thing. We're gonna tack it in 4 places on each side. Then, once it's tacked, we're going to come back to this side again and hit it a little harder. Probably just go ahead and lay a bunch of weld in there. Same thing, we're gonna do it evenly so it doesn't warp. Now, that's not hugely a threat, I don't think, because of the way the shafts are splined into these axle gears. There's play. So, and with the clamps, everything should be good to go. We're gonna go ahead and send it. Be back in a minute. As clean as we got that, I still can detect a little bit of spatter because that grease is just gnarly. All right, now we're gonna spin this over. As you can see the tacks right there between all the teeth. And this is a nice wide open automotive differential style carrier because the ones in the MST 206s and even the Peerless 2300s, it's enclosed inside that clamshell carrier. Is it called a clamshell carrier? I don't know, just made that up. Well, let's clamp this back down. All right, the differential's all welded up, like you saw in the last clip. We're gonna set that aside, and before we put this thing back together, I gotta do a couple more things. So the first thing I'm gonna do is drill and tap the input shaft tower with the needle bearings, and I'm gonna put a grease Zerk fitting right in between the needle bearings. There's a space, maybe a 1/2 inch space. I'm gonna drill and tap this thing for 1/4-28. I believe that's what it is on this Zerk fitting. We're gonna put it there because there's a seal, a O-ring that goes around the input shaft right here. So whatever grease is in those needle bearings, that's it. Nothing from inside the case gets up in there, so that grease is in there until you take it out and replace it again. And this thing's gonna be spinning significantly faster than it ever did before. So I wanna be able to put a renewable grease system on there. The top does not have a seal. So it has a washer that goes underneath the input shaft, snap ring. So what I wanna do with that is when I pump the grease in, I should see some grease push out from under that washer and I'll know it's full. So we're gonna do that, and then we also need to drill a vent into this case too, because when it's gonna be spinning a lot faster, it's gonna be creating heat, and the grease or the gear oil inside is gonna be producing gas. It's gonna want to expand. It needs a place to go, or else otherwise it'll just blow out the RTV. So we're gonna drill somewhere, we'll figure that out. We don't know exactly where yet, where it's not gonna interfere with any gear sets. So we're gonna drill a vent and a Zerk fitting. Did I get it?
Sure did.
Right in between the bearings. All right, so we got the hole drilled and tapped. I'm gonna put a little bit of red Loctite on these threads and go ahead and seat it down in there. That's it. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is put our vent in. All right, we're getting ready to drill the vent tube in. So I've got this 1/4" barb with an 1/8" NPT thread. I've got an 1/8" NPT tap, and I put the cover back on it and I put the gear sets back in to make sure that wherever I drill is not gonna interfere with anything. So I think the best spot for this tap is going to be up here in the corner in the front. Plus, once the pulley is on and the belt is going to be going this way. So this thing is going to be close to the belt, but it's going to be down low, and the hose can come off of here and turn right away and go up or wherever it needs to go. So I think we're going to go with that front corner. All right, here we go. I'm going to drill it from the inside to make sure I can get as close to the edge as possible. And warranty avoided. All right, same story. I'm just gonna use a wrench to turn this in so I don't feel like digging my tap handle out, but it's so easy to cut this. It just sends right in. All right, I ended up using red Loctite because I didn't feel like going out and finding my plumber's tape. I know it's in the truck, but it's hot out there. We're trying to keep it cool in here. But anyways, this thing is about to be done. Bottomed out. Nice and tight. That's going to be it for the transmission modifications. We've got our lock differential, we've got our grease zerk in our input shaft, and now we've got a vent. So we're going to go ahead and start putting this thing back together. Yes.
Make sure you're doing something while I don't.
All right, meow. We got this thing all put back together. It's 100%. The only thing we're missing is the detent for the shifter, which we'll put in after it's assembled. So things to pay attention to is you want to put a little bit of grease on your bronze bushings, brass, whatever they're made of. You got 3 of those. I put a little bit of grease in between the axle and the bushing. You want to make sure all your other needle bearings are greased, like this one. There's one underneath this gear as a needle bearing, and you've got your actual bearings. Now, I'd like to say, one of these bearings was not rolling. It was seized up. I'm not sure how long it's been going on for, but I suspect it was when we had that flood and this thing was underwater because there was some water inside here. One of these bearings was definitely, the needles were not rolling. Now there's something real quick, a little tangent. 2 years ago when I did the 801 and the John Deere, I was reading on forums and things that in the early days of these Peerless 801s, they used these bearings, these needle bearings. Now, what happens is they get seized up and then they end up just carving the axle until it breaks while you're riding it. So, I noticed they also have a slot for a 6203 bearing, which I don't have. I wish I did. But I got these spinning very freely. I cleaned them 5 times in a row and I packed them with some red and tacky. And I'm gonna put gear oil back in this thing, and they're not sealed. The gear oil has a chance to run down the shafts and get into the bearings. So we're gonna go with that. If they, for some reason, freeze up and that happens, we'll change them out, I guess. We're going with those. So we're gonna put the cover back on this thing. We're gonna RTV it, and we're gonna be back with you in a minute. It's been a few hours later. I had to run up to the store to get some Ultra Blue RTV, but we're ready to put this thing back together. We already test fit it. The cover goes back on nice and smooth. All of our bushings are in the right orientation with those little tabs you gotta watch out for. And now, we're gonna send it with this RTV, bolted up.
Send it.
RTV's all finished. We're gonna add a little bit of oil, gear oil, and a combination of Lucas oil stabilizer before we put the cover back on so we don't have to force it through that little hole we drilled earlier for the vent. While the transmission's drying, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the pulley. Now we're gonna put a 6-inch pulley on the transmission, and we're gonna use one of these store-bought weld-on hubs. I need to remove about 3/16 of an inch from the bottom of it, and I need to remove about 1/4 of an inch from the top to make it match the old hub and go under the snap ring. And I'm going to do that using the Milwaukee lathe. All right, now we've got to cut off the front. We got the hub all cut down to size, and it should fit just perfect to where we can get the snap ring on it and sit flush with the pulley. I'm just gonna weld right around that on the surface and on the other side. And also, yesterday when we cut off the old hub, I cut that Woodruff key. I went to Tractor Supply and got a new one, and it fits perfect in the slot and interfaces with this keyway just right. Next thing we're gonna do is deburr this, clean it up a little bit, paint it, put this back on here, well, weld this, put this on, snap ring it, get it in the tractor, start fitting for the belt. We got our transmission pulley painted, that's done. While that's drying, we're gonna go ahead and recreate at least one of these. I'm probably gonna do both of these U-bolts because the one broke that holds the transmission up to the frame. The best way I could think to do that is I went to a hardware store earlier and I found these 5/16 by 5-inch bolts. And I'm going to bend it around and make it in the same shape as this. And it just so happens that a 2-inch or 1 7/8", sorry, trailer hitch is the same diameter. That's what I need to do. So I'm gonna bend this around using a MAP gas torch to heat it up. And as it heats up, I'll pull it around with another pair of pliers. Hold it, and then I'm gonna try to bend it. Don't let it go. Heat it a little further out. All right, so this here is the finished product, and it's very close, or if not the exact same as the original bolt. I got both my new U-bolts fabricated out, and now I'm going to tap out with a 5/16 18 die threads on this side. Feel it. All right, feel it. Yes. When it starts to get really hard, or not really hard, but when you'll feel it, when it starts to get hard, you have to put the ratchet back the other way and then turn to the left. No, this way. Now go the other way. Yes, back it off. And look what happens is that you're breaking, it's cutting the metal, and then when you back it off, it breaks that cut metal away. Now, go back and go right again until it starts to get hard. Now go about 2 or 3 turns, go, no, keep going. You gotta cut more threads. Don't just jerk, feel it. Use your arms and push and pull. Push with this one, pull with that one. It is hard. All right guys, we got the transmission done today. I got the pulley on it. That thing's looking lovely, it's all torqued down. The RTV is set up. We got the new U-bolts made for the transmission to hold it in. They're currently drying with paint, but it's getting late. This is the second full 10+ hour day we've spent working on this thing. So we're gonna go inside and we'll see you guys tomorrow in the morning. Like that. Oh, hey guys, welcome back to the shop. It's the next morning. We started bright and early. We're getting this transmission mounted in here right now. So these U-bolts we made last night worked pretty good. They fit just like the stock ones did. Got our engine pulley all painted up. Let's see how she fits. And perfect. And this one gets a bolt from the bottom. There's no shaft collars on this one. All right, we got the new belt in place, and it looks like it needs to be 1 inch longer than the stock belt was. You can see that space right there. So we're gonna run the tractor supply. We're gonna get that. But before we run, I wanna see if them new tires are gonna fit. We got some certified balloon tires. Check this out. Let's see what happens. All right, guys, before we leave, we had to just see what they both look like on there. I gotta say, that looks absolutely ridiculous. That is like an ATV looking deal, like a big red. Well, how do you like it?
Wow!
Are you gonna ride through some mud?
Yeah!
How much mud?
All of it!
Awesome. All right, let's go get a belt. We're back from Tractor Supply. I went ahead and picked up 3 belts. I'm gonna return 2. So I got an 88, an 89, and a 90. 1 out of the 3 of these is gonna work. So I think we're gonna start with the 89 because that's the one I think it might be. If anything, I think it'll be a 90 if the 89 does not work. The 88 is probably gonna be too small, but I learned a long time ago, it's better to get several when you go so you don't gotta keep going back, except for once to return the ones you don't need. The 89-inch belt did not work. The 90-inch belt works, but we got some things to fix here. Come over here and check this out. First and foremost, I put the pulley at the exact center line on the transmission of where it used to be. It was 15/16 of an inch from the bottom of the hub to the center of the pulley. On the engine, all right, so we were making great progress on the idler pulley, and I started putting this thing back together. I put the gear selector back on and realized it is all up in the belt. That's because the old pulley was way out here and the belt used to come this direction and clear it. With the smaller pulley on the transmission, this thing is dead in the way. My immediate solution is to take this apart, cut this off of here, flip it, and weld it back so this is down here. Hopefully it doesn't interfere with the transmission when it turns. I don't think it will, but there's only one way to find out. All right, so I got my transmission selector bracket all extended and welded out. There's a 1/2 inch 3/16 piece of bar stock in between this piece and this piece I put in there. I tacked it on both sides, then I ran a bead down both sides, then I ran one big bead and blended it all in on both sides. So that should be plenty strong. I'm gonna reinstall this on the lawnmower. And the next thing we're gonna do is take the stock gear selector rod that goes in here, and we're gonna start having to heat up and bend and modify that thing to work how it did before. All right, so it only goes one way on the transmission selector rod. So there we have it. And I've got full range through all the gears. It doesn't hit the transmission anymore. All right, so I've got my selector rod here, and I can't even get it to go through because it's just jammed up on the top side. What happens is this bend right here, it can't be there. So we're gonna straighten this out and then come back over here and try to fit it. We're gonna have to do this little by little. The shifter rod all bent up just like it needs to be. It matches up with the factory numbers 1 through 5 in reverse. Everything goes smooth. I put this 1/2 inch washer on here so that it goes right up against the side of that shift selector piece on the transmission that we just welded up. So everything fits nice and tight. And then we bent this 90 degree on the very end. So when you're sitting on the seat, you can just reach down and easily grab it. But we don't have anything to put on the end of this yet. Right now, it's just a 1/2 inch rod coupler. It works with the threads that were already cut on this rod. So Stefan, being the fantastic brother that he is, thought, because we didn't know what we were gonna put on here. We were thinking like an 8-ball or something, right? Well, he goes in his tool bag. This is his screwdriver. He wants to sacrifice this screwdriver. It's a Craftsman. We're gonna cut this handle, we're gonna cut the shank off right there. And we're gonna slam that right in there. We're gonna unscrew the rod coupling and we're gonna plug weld it in the bottom side, about halfway in the rod coupling. In this end. And then we'll be able to thread it down onto here and he'll have a screwdriver handle as a shifter. I think that'll be pretty cool. Let's do it up. All right, we got the screwdriver handle all set up. So this is a 1/2 inch rod coupling. I drilled a hole on each side of it, cut off the shank of the screwdriver. I ground down the corners because it wouldn't fit. Now, we're gonna stick this in here and we're gonna plug weld down in there and on the other side. I've also got a cold, wet rag that we're gonna protect the handle of the screwdriver with while we weld. And as soon as we're done welding, we're gonna dip it in that water. Let's go, ready? All right, now we gotta do the other side. And now we've got our shifter handle. Just like that. Let's see how it looks on the mower. All right, there it is. So you got reverse, neutral, first, second, third, fourth, fifth gear. Pretty cool. All right, I want to show you all this before we paint the shifter handle. Right now the belt is engaged, the clutch is tight. So here's our new linkage for the shifter. Right now it's in neutral. We're gonna go all the way over to 5th gear. That's 5th gear, doesn't touch. Back over here to neutral, reverse. Reverse, you got plenty of room there. So we're 100% on our shifter. Another problem solved. Now we're gonna move on to the belt keeps. All right, so I just finished the idler pulley belt keep. Come over here and check this out. So there it is right there. It extends down below the idler pulley. And then when I push the clutch down, it keeps it. So that's done. The next thing we're gonna do is take the stock belt keep from the front engine pulley and we're gonna modify it to go around the new, bigger pulley. So that thing, you can see these 2 bolt holes, these 2 threaded holes coincide with these 2 holes in the frame. And this thing used to go up all the way and then it was above the old pulley, and this came down next to it and held the belt from coming off the pulley. So what we need to do is cut this thing we're gonna cut it right about where it starts to 90. So like right there and right there. And this is gonna continue on straight, right straight across, and then we're gonna weld new ones up in order to hold the belt on. So that way we're able to unbolt it and just drop it down. Because before with the old setup, you had to trap the belt in there. We don't want to do that. So let's get started. All right, check it out. Here's the finished belt keeper. And I did one more thing. I added a little piece of C-channel on this one because when I welded this on, it wasn't just quite as close as I'd like it to be. So the thickness of the edge of that C-channel, about maybe 1/8 of an inch, was all it needed. It also gives it surface area to that side when it goes slack, and it acts even more of a keep because of the C channel itself kind of wraps around the belt. There ain't no way that's gonna come off of the front of that pulley. So Stefan's gonna go ahead and prep this thing out. He's gonna shoot it with some flat black. I'm gonna move on to the rear keep. I think we just need maybe one back there, and this thing's ready to start testing. Well, I just started working on the rear belt keep, and the Murray extended an olive branch to me because I used the stock belt keep that was there before, and it was on the other side, but there was already a stock factory hole right there, and it works perfect. So I'm going with that. This belt is kept here on the clutch pulley. It's got this cross beam here that the belt literally hovers right over. So when the clutch is depressed, it can't sag down. The front has that excessive belt keep system I just made for it. Stefan's outside painting it. And I think that one keep on the back is gonna be sufficient because when I push the clutch down, there is not a whole lot of play. It's not like the belt can even come off the back of the pulley, but it's slack enough that I can turn the engine pulley and the belt don't turn. So I think we're gonna go with that. I'm gonna leave that how it is. We're gonna put the shifter back in. We're gonna put the front belt keep back in. We're gonna put the tires on this thing. We're gonna drop it down, take this thing for a ride. We got this thing put back together 100%. We got every cotter pin, bolt, belt keep. We double checked everything. And I think we're good. So before we let this thing down, we're gonna fire it up and then engage and disengage the belt. We're gonna watch this thing move under here before we let it down so we can make sure it's 100%. Ready? All right, I think we're good to go. We're gonna let this thing down, put the hood on it. Let's take it outside.
Yeah! Alright, that's the first time in 3 days.
Ready?
Slow.
Okay.
Tiny again.
Looks so much bigger up in the air.
You want to do the bolts on?
Bolts.
Then the one that doesn't have bolts. Let's see the battery. I need bolts.
right, guys, first impressions. I've never driven it before, so of course there was a little bit of a learning curve. It's pitch black outside, and I was trying to drive with the flashlight in one hand and the steering wheel in the other. Now, I put it in fifth, and I got going, I don't know, faster than they could run. I don't know how fast I was going. It has more in it. Like, I didn't go full throttle. I think it can go, I can squeeze a couple more miles an hour out of it. I bet you I was doing close to 20. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This thing pretty much hauls, and the belt needs to break in, and we need to adjust the brakes. It has no brakes. It had brakes up in the air when we were messing with it, but it doesn't right now. So, other than that, I think it's a success though. It held together, the little boys drove it, Crusher drove it, Jase loves it. I think we're ready. So, with that, it's about 11:30 at night. We're gonna hit the sack. We'll see you guys tomorrow in the morning. It's the next day. We got up first thing this morning and we jumped on the Murray and took this thing out for some testing. And I gotta say, it's awesome. Last night was sketch because I couldn't see. It was pitch black out and I was trying to hold a flashlight in one hand and drive with the other. But now that I got two hands on the wheel, this thing's great. The transmission shifts perfect. Everything about it, it's got good road manners. I had this thing going full throttle. You'll see on some footage where I was next to Stefan. He was going as fast as he could on his wheel horse. And this thing can drive right around it. But I think moving forward, it needs some more mods. It needs an external brake because the brake that's on the transmission is just not enough. We set it to where it works, and then in just a couple of stops, I think the pads wear down and it needs to be reset. It's gonna burn out quick. It needs an external brake. I think it's going to need some front axle bracing. But other than that, how it is right now, this thing's a ton of fun to drive. So, anyways, if you guys are new to the channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out. And once again, I'm Jason.
I'm Jase.
I'm Stefan.
This is Crusher. This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and we'll see you on the next one.